Personal finance practice problem using Excel. Cost of service contract versus investment. Prepare to get financially fit by practicing personal finance. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. If you have access to the Excel worksheet, would like to follow along, note that we're down here in the practice tab as opposed to the example tab. The example tab, in essence, being an answer key. Information's on the left-hand side. We're going to populate that into the blue area on the right-hand side. The information says we have a service contract, and we can do a similar kind of scenario calculation here if it was a warranty or something like that as well. We're going to say for the years, 4 years, and there's going to be a cost per year for the service contract of $200. So we're going to have to pay $200 per year for the 4-year time frame. We're going to calculate future value of money if you invest the cost of the service contract and earn a rate of return of 10%. So in other words, if we're thinking, is it worth our time to be paying the $200 for the service contract? It's going to be costing us $200 a year. What are the alternatives if we can measure off the opportunity costs of doing so? So one way we might think about that is to say, well, if I wasn't to do that and I was to just invest the $200, how much might I have in the future? And another way we might do it is to say, well, let us present value the future cash stream flow and see how much that $200 is costing us just in current dollars, and or just simply figure out what the current cost will be to us in current dollars. So in other words, the first thing we might do is say, well, how much is that going to cost me over 4 years? And without time value of money, we could say, well, if the cost per year is obviously $200 for 4 years, the years that are covered, we're going to have to pay that 4 times for 4 years. Underlining font group and underline that will clearly give us the total cost of this is going to be equal to the 200 times 4 or the $800. So that would cost us the $800. So then we can think, well, that's over 4 years. What if I was to take that 200 per year and put it into an investment earning a rate of return at 10%? How much would that, be getting us in future value terms? If we were able to do that, we can calculate the future value. Notice we're using our time value of money calculations. If you want to look at the tools and focus in on them in more detail, take a look at a prior section. We're taking those tools and applying them to different decisions as we go through at this point. So future value calculations, I'm going to do it a bit quicker than I would if we were focusing just on these types of time value of money calculations. So we're going to say negative future value, negative in order to flip the sign, brackets, and we'll pick up the rate, which is going to be the 10%. So I'm going to pick up the 10%, comma, and we're going to say number of periods. The number of periods we'll say is 4 for 4 years, and then comma, the payment is going to be $200 paid each year. That's going to give us our future value. We should then be at the 928. Let's add a couple decimals. Let's see some pennies here. Couple decimals, 928.20 about. So we can kind of check that if we were to do our amortization table, which I like to do oftentimes, build our good old amortization table for 1, 2, 3, and 4 years. Let's go ahead and center those, selecting them, alignment group and center. Now notice we usually think, when we think of an amortization table, of the payment happening at the end of the period. So I'm going to say so be careful with that first payment. Does it happen at the beginning or the end of the year? We're going to assume that it happens at the end because that's the normal flow. I'm just going to say that equals to 200. So that will be our investment, and then we'll be increasing it for the next 3 years here. So we'll say this is going to be equal to the 200 times the rate, which is going to be the 10%, 200 times 10%. So we have the interest of the 20, and we're going to be putting in another payment of $200, and that means that the investment's going to be the prior 200 plus the SUM, sum, shift 9, left arrow holding down shift, the 200 and the 20, closing it up, shift 0 and enter. Let's do it one more time, and then I'll copy it down. I'm going to copy this down and try to think about how to enter this in such a way that we can copy it down with the autofill easily. So this will be equal to the increase, which will be that 420. I don't need to do any absolute references here because that amount is in our cell and I want it to move down as we copy it down. Times, we'll pick up the rate Down here, this is outside of the table. That's when usually you need to do something like an absolute reference because I don't want it to move when I copy the cell down. Therefore, I'm going to select F4 on the keyboard, $sign before the B and 8. That's an absolute reference. You only need a mixed reference with $sign, but absolute is easier typically, so I'm going to use it. And then this is going to be equal to the cost per year is going to be $200. I'm going to select F4 on the keyboard once again because that amount is outside of our table. Therefore, we don't want it to move down. So we're going to put $signs before the B and 3 tab. Then this is going to be equal to the prior balance of the 420 plus, I'm going to say SUM with the sum function, shift 9, left arrow, the 200, the 42, closing that up, shift 0. Notice, although this is a more complex formula, all of it is within the table. All three of those cells, we want them to be moving down as we copy down. Therefore, no absolutes necessary. Let's go ahead and select those three. Selecting those three, and we're going to then grab fill handle right there. Going to grab it with the clicker and then left clicky on it, and then we're going to drag it down. And there we go, and we could double check that it does what we think it should do. Everything is acting the way it should be acting. Good. Okay, so there we have it. So we could say, and that's one way you can make a comparison. You could say, okay, well, what's the opportunity cost if I pay the $200 for 4 years, or if I put it into an investment, I could end up with the $928 at the end and have my increase from interest or whatever of the $128. Now you could also say, well, I can also discount it back and think, well, how much in terms of today's dollars, if I look at a discount rate of 10%, am I really talking about? Because it's not really $800 here, because using the same logic, if I pull this second $200 payment doesn't happen until a year from now. So if I can earn the 10% on that, if I had it now, and then earn it, then I can use the same logic to pull back the costs of the $800 to the current present value amount using a discount. So these are the two ways we might approach this. So we can say, all right, well then present value, let's present value that series of payments using that same discount rate. I can say negative present value, shift 9. The rate is going to be that 10%, comma. Number of periods is going to be 4 again, comma. The payment is going to be 200. So we'll bring it back now and say it's not really 800. If we're using a 10% discount rate, we're talking 634 of the cost instead of the 800 in today's dollars if we use a discount rate of the 10%. And we can also verify that over here by saying, let's take the present value of this single sum, meaning, in other words, we said we would be at, in 4 years, $928. If I bring that back to the current day's dollars with the discount rate of the 10%, present value of 1 rather than present value of an annuity, we should get back to that 634. Let's check it out, try it out, and do it. Present value, negative PV, shift 9, rate 10%, comma, number of periods, 4. Let's pick it up right there. Comma, no payment, because we're not talking annuity, we're talking instead present value of 1, so 2 commas, comma, comma. Then we're looking at the future value, the FV, which is going to be that 928, and enter, and that brings us back to the 634, So those are the two ways we can kind of look at it. Notice when you're bringing the money back to the present, you might say, well, maybe discount, maybe you're going to look at it at a rate that's more like an inflation rate or something like that, somewhere between 2 and 5% or something. So you could change this to like 2% and bring it back. So if you're talking about maybe just inflation, time value, or the purchasing power, you might be saying, well, it's 762 today versus, or if you're comparing your opportunity cost included and you think you can get a return of the 10%, then you can use 10%. And we got the 634 about.